Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. It is Road Beers episode number 5. Probably going to be the best one yet. Berm
Without question.
promises not to sit there and think about old memories that have escaped his brain for long periods of the podcast. We took that note, right, Berm? You came ready to play this week?
I don't even remember what happened last time, to be honest. Don't even remember.
There's Chives is with us. He's ready. Spencer Holbrook for some Chive buys. That's, of course, is Jeremy Birmingham, my buddy up there, still in quarantine. I am here in my home office here in Columbus. We're all still going a little crazy. How is your mental state this week, Berm, as we are in quarantine week number 55?
It's deteriorating quickly. Honestly, you start to run out of things to occupy your day and your mind. Especially right now, it was 75 degrees 3 days ago. Yesterday it snowed. Tomorrow we're supposed to get 4 inches of snow. And so you can't go outside. You can't do anything. It's 32 degrees outside. And there's no sports on TV. You can only play the same video game over and over again. You try to occupy yourself with work and family, but the reality is those things have, only a limited window of time for each day. And then family makes you crazy. So what do? You just sit here. I've dove back into Ozark. Dive into whatever.
Took a dive.
I've been decided to get back into watching Ozark. So I watched the entire second season in the last 2 days, and then started on season 3. Just living the dream.
I've not seen Ozark. Everybody seems to be raving about it right now. I was like, that's the next thing that we should probably get into. What is it about Ozark that is so enjoyable?
It's like Breaking Bad, but in the mountains of Missouri, in the Ozark. Coincidentally, it's actually set in Lake Ozark.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
is that where they got the name?
Yeah, that's my understanding anyway. I had not spoken to a showrunner about that, but I believe that's where they got the name. Jason Bateman's, it's one of those guys that people I think just like watching him act. He's exactly the same character in everything he's ever in, but he's like a relatable dude. I think he is no different in this as he is in Arrested Development. Honestly, it's like.
Well, that's what I don't understand. I've heard you've said that to me before. How can a Bluth be in this gritty? I don't know.
Because he's the same guy. I just don't. He's the same guy in The Outsider on HBO as he doesn't have an ability to change who he is in my mind. So he's always going to be Michael Bluth, and I just envision picking up that character and putting him in different scenes, and that's funny to me. But no, it's entertaining. There's some really great secondary characters. When you're dealing with stuff like the cartel and backwoods rednecks, it's kind of fun. It's an entertaining show. It's very well written. I would recommend it if you haven't watched it. You're an adult, because it is not for chitlins.
So you didn't. How many times have you watched Onward then in the last week?
Actually, that has not been replayed in the last week. Frozen 2 continues to be the every morning wake-up call for some. I don't even understand it. I mean, they're 13 and 10. They shouldn't be. It's not like they're 5 years old. But I think at this point, the 13-year-old is putting it on in the morning because she knows it's driving me crazy. So she just does that.
Do they watch the full thing every morning?
No, it's just on in the background.
Oh.
It's just on. But they're not even watching it because I think it's being done solely for the fact that it's driving me up a wall.
That's pretty clever. You got to give them, you guys have to tip your hat to that.
Yeah, it's like a pretty classic troll job at this point.
Austin, this first Chive Buy, we never do anything knowing that we never do anything to Berm knowing that it just makes it mad, ever.
Oh, I would never dream of it. I want him to be as happy as possible at all times. That's what's most important to me.
We just want to have this topic.
We want to
be very clear for people out there. My name is Jeremy Birmingham. Okay. My nickname is my Twitter handle, things of that nature are Berm. I look good in that picture. Berm, Birm, because it is an abbreviated version of Birmingham. Autocorrect takes Berm and regularly makes it Brim for people because Berm is not a word that is in most people's phones. However, and this is not exclusive to people on YouTube or people on Twitter, there are recruits who have said they couldn't find me in their phone because it's under Brim and not Berm. So please, and even Berm, Berm, which is the little patch of grass in the middle of the highway, that's not it either. It's Berm, Birm, short for Birmingham, which is my last name. So there is no reason to call me Brim.
Chives, what is your favorite spelling of Berm?
I don't know. I like the class.
We've seen Burns.
Burns. Mr. Burns is good.
Mr. Barnes. I don't get it.
I challenge you, loyal listeners of Road Beers. What crazy spelling can you think up next to entertain us so that Chives and I can call Professor Bram by a new name?
So what happens is that every time one of these abominations of spelling make its way to the internet, I get a message in my inbox in Slack with a screenshot going, "Hey Barnes, hey Brim," and they know what it's doing to me. And I'm in a very fragile state as it is.
Well, hold on. It's not they. Like, this has been the one thing that Chives is actively leading by himself. You think he is your nemesis on this front. I'm just wildly entertained by it.
Yeah, okay, fine. It's a chive thing.
There's a thing I've learned about Burns, and I think it's that before I came along, there was only one person who like really poked the bear at all times, and it was Barn. Right. So now that Brim is not alone,
that is wildly inaccurate. To suggest that Mr. Ward does not poke the bear is ridiculous in its assertion.
But a lot of times he's just laughing at everything, and like then he plays off of it. So like you usually are like the one who makes the dad joke or the pun and gets everything started. And now that that I get to be a part of that, I feel like it's like, really? Sometimes you just look at me like,
I want to be clear. I make dad jokes and puns because I freaking love them, not because I'm trying to poke someone with them.
I think there's
it is not. I will admit that I don't care that Austin hates them. But
I think I'm in the same. I think I'm in the same camp there.
That's not the same as me going, you know what? I'm doing this because Austin hates them. I'm doing it and saying, I don't care that he hates them. I love it.
I think 20% of the time you do it because you know how much it irritates me.
Yeah.
And what I'm disturbed by most is that Chives will take that as encouragement from you. And I don't believe that he would make nearly as many puns at his age if he didn't have your hilarious approval.
Okay, this is where I will defend myself. I'm going to tell a story that I didn't think I'd ever tell.
He's pretty corny, Austin. He's a pretty corny dude.
When I was like 14 and 15 and I first got Instagram, way back before I was even in high school, every Monday I would post a pun on Instagram. And
you call it Pun Day?
Pun Day. Okay. So I have been making puns far longer than I have known you guys. So this is not a Berm-driven campaign for me. This is a lifelong almost
what can
prophecy.
I say? I love
for me to love puns.
I love wordplay.
You just happen to help hire a second version of Berm in a sense where like I love puns.
Well, I definitely was hoping that we would get a second Berm on the staff, and that was certainly my goal.
Yeah, there you go.
You must have been one cool 14-year-old like firing up that Instagram account just so you could make puns.
I mean, I'll tell you this. I was 6 inches shorter than I am now, and I weighed the same as I do now. So, I mean, you can just imagine me as like this little stumpy 14-year-old who was the ball boy for the high school basketball team and,
That's
just
adorable.
played a bunch of basketball as this chunky little kid and, hung out. So, yeah, that's what I was. And I loved puns.
Becoming a North Carolina fan without ever having visited there. Man City, just finding as many bandwagons.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, yeah. For the record out there, folks.
He won't even engage on this.
Chives is dead. We've killed Chives.
I have.
Go ahead, Chives. Let's explain your fandom.
My fandom. Okay, we'll go through my fandoms here, and then I don't know where this will take us, but my fandoms go. The first thing I ever wore in my entire life after I left the hospital was a Steelers onesie. So this was not a choice for me at all. This was I was born into a Steelers family.
Everybody got choices.
Sounds like child abuse.
One of the other first things I ever wore was Ohio State stuff. So there's like another one off the list. And
Ohio State football, not Ohio State basketball, obviously.
Right. It was just Ohio State. I'm starting to, I've gotten away from that as I've gotten this job, and you report on stuff. And then in 2005, Illinois played against North Carolina in the national title game. My dad told me I was 8, so my dad was like, "Hey Spencer, we need to root for the Big Ten." Because you just root for the Big Ten in the national title game. And I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be this rebellious 8-year-old and root for North Carolina." And so after that, I was a North Carolina.
Why didn't you rebel against the Steelers?
Because the Steelers were winning. I was 6 when they drafted. I was 7 when they drafted.
For your sake, that you had never said that, because you just admitted that all of this is partially related to the bandwagon.
And it's and now it's being recorded, Spencer. Like we now have proof.
No, but listen, I was 7 when they drafted Ben Roethlisberger. My first ever Steelers memory was them getting beat.
Are you suggesting that Illinois wasn't winning because they were the number 1 ranked team in the country that entire year?
It was just a certain thing where, like, my dad was like, "Oh man, we really got to pull hard for the Big Ten," and I was like, "I'm gonna rebel this one time," and like it's more of like a loose, just like, "Oh, North Carolina won, that's nice." It's not like a crazy like I'm not gonna stand up in the middle of a crowd and like go crazy if North Carolina wins a basketball game in the NCAA tournament or something.
Who would ever do that?
Yeah, I know.
Listen,
so like, I'm not going to do that.
If you're covering an Ohio State game, you're not going to stand up and like watch the North Carolina game in the media workroom and like cheer when a basket goes in.
No.
What's the point of even saying you're a Carolina fan then?
But like on my phone, I have the settings to where on the ESPN notifications, like if North Carolina is playing and it's a close game, I get a notification, and then it's like, oh, I'll flip it on. There's 4 minutes to go, and they're up 3.
But you'll still have Oasis playing in your AirPods.
I do like Oasis, yeah. There's a fandom that we can talk about. I know you guys love talking about that.
Let's keep going. So,
boy, would you like to? Because that was an interesting night.
So there's the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Manchester City.
Can I just say one more thing about the Steelers? Like, I wish you wouldn't. I grew up 2 hours from Detroit. I grew up 2 hours and 15 minutes from Cleveland. I grew up 2 hours from Cincinnati. And then I only grew up like 3.5 hours from Pittsburgh. So it's not like it's crazy.
It's like the furthest one away.
The thing about where I live and where I grew up is like there are Colts fans because it's 3.5 hours away. There are Lions fans. There are Steelers fans. There are Browns fans. There are Bengals fans because I live in this little area where like you're close to all of those teams. It's not like the craziest thing. There are a lot of Steelers fans where I'm from.
All right. So, but you are now a passionate Blue Jackets fan like I am, but did you grow up cheering for the Red Wings or the Penguins?
No.
Red Wings for me.
It's a little different because the Jackets first came to Columbus, I think I was 4. So like my first ever hockey memory is like 2002 or 2003 going to a Blue Jackets game with my dad. So like I have a connection there to the Blue Jackets to where like that's my team based on that fact.
Wow, you didn't just pick the team they were playing that day just to be a rebel?
Basically, every team that I have that I root for is a product of my dad and I bonding over a certain team.
So I became a Red Wings fan because I didn't like hockey. And one of my good friends, his name is Luke Smith, was a big hockey fan. And we used to play the NHL game all the time on Sega Genesis back in the day.
I bet I've never even played a Sega Genesis.
So we decided one evening that I needed to adopt a hockey team And so what Luke did is he put all the hockey teams in the league in a hat and made me draw a team, and I drew the Red Wings. And then found out later that he put only the Red Wings in the hat, like a dick. So that's how I became a Red Wings fan. I am now, I would say, more of a Blue Jackets fan than a Red Wings fan, just because I tend to gravitate towards things from the greatest state in America, which is Ohio, obviously. So, like, I'm a Bengals fan and a Reds fan, even though I grew up in Toledo. I'm not a Lions or a Browns fan. And they're the furthest one away, but that's because my brother was, like, everything he did, I did. So it was the only one that made sense, although he was a Lakers fan for some reason and a Flyers fan. My family's all over the map, though. We got Oilers fans, Dolphins fans, Seahawks fans, Raiders fans, Vikings fans. Like, it's pretty crazy.
I will say that Chives, and he has obviously had this conversation with me numerous times. He at least has passionate justification for it. I used to work with somebody in Tennessee who was what was he? He was a Yankees fan, a Celtics fan, and a Cowboys fan. And I'm not making that up. That was the most bizarre.
Yeah, my father is a Yankees fan, Celtics fan, Raiders fan, because
How can you even do that? New York and Boston, even if you're doing different sports, it's such a massive rivalry just between the cities. How could you even?
I mean, my dad grew up in the 50s and 60s. There wasn't a whole lot of other options. But he grew up a fan of Mickey Mantle, and then the Celtics, I guess, because I don't know why. Because they won like every championship in the 1960s, right? So I'm sure there was a lot of fans born then, and the Raiders were the bad boy of football.
Right.
Bad boys.
Bad boys.
Yeah. So I kind of have a similar thing. My grandpa is a diehard Cleveland sports fan, except for he loves the Celtics. And the only reason he loves the Celtics is because he is Larry Bird everything. He loves Larry Bird. And so I kind of get that, Berm. You gotta, if those older people, if they like, the olds, he likes Larry Bird. And so he's not a Cavs fan. He doesn't care about the Cavs at all. So every once in a while he'll watch a Celtics game, which I don't know why he'd watch the NBA anyways.
I was an NBA fan back in the early 90s and followed them because of Michael Jordan. I followed the Bulls. And then I became a LeBron fan. And so then I kind of liked whatever team LeBron was on. But I've never been able to convince myself that I had to watch an NBA game that wasn't either in the last 2 minutes of the game or wasn't being played in the playoffs. Like, the people who watch regular season NBA basketball, that is a phenomenon and a obsession that I cannot come to terms with.
Yeah, there are some people on the Ohio State beat who do religiously follow the NBA, and the Lakers in particular, and it's just I can't understand it. And
that was the best part of our entire Fiesta Bowl trip, was making fun of Patrick Murphy watching the Lakers while we were playing euchre.
Man, remember when there were live sports? That was amazing. I think that's what got us off on this tangent in the first place. But you said there are none on right now, Berm, and that's not true because there's esports. Well, in the last week, I've watched 3 different Belarus Premier League soccer games. Great live sports going on. Definitely didn't gamble on that. No way. Don't look into that. There's been Ukrainian table tennis still going on, live streams. Very entertaining sport there.
This is when you probably miss curling the most, isn't it?
It is when I do miss curling very much. And it's sad that even a sport like that, you can't the season would be over right now. The ice is gone at the Columbus Curling Club. I'm very fortunate that the golf courses, as I said last week, have stayed open.
Here in Michigan, we're not allowed.
Just go.
But here's the thing. I'm not going to talk about soccer with you two because I know I'm going to be outnumbered because you both like it for some reason. But I don't consider Ukraine or Belarus soccer to be a live sporting event. I would rather watch Onward or Frozen 2.
But why? Oh, because you don't gamble and because you don't understand soccer. Boo.
Keep
Berm,
going.
you should.
And also because dogs can play soccer.
Berm,
They can.
Airbud
they
played
can,
basketball. What's your point?
Airbud's not a real dog. I mean, he is a real dog, but he didn't really play basketball. Dogs can fundamentally understand the rules of soccer, which is push a ball into a basket. They can do it. I've seen it. I've watched Puppy Bowl many times. They get it. They get the idea. And to me, that says
Puppy Bowl is football.
they're not picking it up. They're not passing the ball. All they're doing is running it and putting it in over a line.
Give them
That's
100 more years, and they'll evolve and embrace the forward pass.
If the game doesn't require opposable thumbs, to me, it's not complex enough.
It's like watching the Michigan-Iowa game from last year.
People can play soccer without thumbs.
They'd be really terrible at throw-ins.
Well, maybe they don't have to be the guy that does the throw-ins.
But you're
you
hard
can
up.
bounce it off your head.
You're hard up.
Bounce off your head.
You're hard up for live sports, Berm. So, this is your opportunity to get into soccer. It's one of the few things we have right now.
You know, the irony, of course, is that FIFA is one of my favorite video games of all time. I thoroughly enjoy it more than any other sports game. The games that I find, like hockey and soccer, are the best video sports games there are. And I don't particularly care for soccer in real life, but I really enjoy the game. It's like strawberries. I don't like strawberries, really, but I love strawberry filling in a toaster strudel. You know, strawberry toaster strudels are the best.
I wasn't supposed to bring Allie back into the conversation this week, but she always complains if she will eat real cherries, but she hates cherry flavoring. It's I'll get, Code Red or Cherry Zero, a little CZ action. She's like, oh, why did you get that cherry? I'm like, you like cherries. No, cherry flavoring's not good. That's a great Allie impression. That's what my wife sounds like right now. But
not the best impression I've heard.
No, that was my Bobcat for you. Anyway, I don't know what got me onto that, but that's weird. It's weird how people's taste buds work. Chives still eats Skyline. Did you have it last week, Chives?
I did not, because of the quarantine. I have not gotten over there. There are a lot of places that I haven't gotten during the quarantine that I thought I would order takeout from. DoorDash does a lot of sales right now with free delivery and no fee if you spend more than $15. And so I should be supporting my local Skyline, but at the same time, I don't know. Oh my gosh, that's a great picture. You just cut me off with that, man. You got to talk about that.
So look at this. Which shoulder is it? Look at our guy Zach Boren here. So this is why I miss sports so much. And last year, the playoff and the sweep was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had as a sports fan. I've been waiting, not as long as everyone who's been fans of this franchise. Even Chives has been following them a lot longer than me since I moved here in 2012. But being a season ticket holder and going through all the, seeing some pretty bad hockey after I moved here and watched them, was one of the most gratifying things. And Zach Boren there has been a fan for a long time, and his company is a big supporter. They sponsor the On Ice girls. That is just the most Zach Boren photo I think that ever has existed. And it's making its way around. He's having to defend himself. Oh, you're really looking sober. And he says that's the only beer he had that night. And there's no way that can possibly be true.
Yeah, I doubt that. I mean, maybe that's the only brand of beer he had that night.
That could be true. I had probably 25 beers that night. And I would have more if I could have. It was so incredible.
Zach Boren, we talked about this briefly before we started recording. He's a guy I really want to get on this show because I think people would enjoy just listening to him talk. Some of the stories that we've heard from Zach in the last year and a half are absolutely ridiculous. But
some of them can't be recorded, Berm.
Sure, but the fact that he was the Columbus Bachelor is great.
Yeah.
The fact that he's been now applied apparently by his buddies for Love Is Blind season 2 on Netflix is great. I hope that pans out more than it. I actually hope that happens more than sports return.
No.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I told you my mental state is decaying rapidly. That's where I'm at. All I care about now is what I can binge on Netflix.
So you're going to shift from covering recruiting to covering Zach Boren on Love Is Blind?
No, I'm going to cover anyone on Love Is Blind. I just hope he's on it because it's a good opportunity to get my foot in the Love Is Blind coverage door.
So he counts as one of my favorite personalities that I've ever covered at Ohio State. And, somebody asked me that this week for question of the day, and I went with Cardale Jones. I'm curious. Spencer's only been doing –
Cardale has me blocked on Twitter for some reason, so I'm still not sure exactly how I could say him. Although I have always enjoyed Cardale's personality on camera and off. He's extremely affable and genuine.
I didn't think you were going to pick Cardale.
Tyvis Powell's probably up there. I always really enjoyed Pat Elflein as a interview. I thought he was just one of the more thoughtful and but also entertaining interviewers. But I mean, how do you break this down? I mean, how do you say, is it only who you enjoyed covering or who you?
Well, I think that was what made it such a good question, and it's better to probably dive into it in this setting than the question of the day, because I tried to just incorporate everything. Like Cardale's story is so unique and never really going to be duplicated with a third-string quarterback making his first starts and winning 3 postseason games. That's never, ever going to happen again. And then the offseason, the tweets and his personality and everything rolled into one. Some of it obviously extends beyond Ohio State, but that's sort of why I went that direction with him. But, if you're talking about the best overall athlete that, I've covered, then we're talking about bringing in Chase Young in that conversation.
Braxton Miller. Yeah.
Zeke, we've been fortunate, obviously, covering Ohio State to be around some of the best, athletes that the sport has produced. I was one of the few people I think that had any kind of productive professional relationship with Mike Thomas when he was here. He did not have a lot of didn't like to open up much and didn't really have that much support. He had a unique run in Columbus, especially after that second year.
Sophomore year, yeah.
So a lot of people turned on him then. And, so you put him in that mix. Guys that are just great interviews like Tyvis, he never became a real star at the next level. But you could go to him or Josh Perry in 2014 for great insight and some entertaining, quotes. Billy Price.
For me, it all goes back to the 2011 class because that's when I really started discovering Twitter. It's when I started not just caring about recruiting on the periphery, but also being involved and talking to kids and getting to know them, even though they were really, when I started in this business in 2011, the first recruiting interview I ever did was Billy Price, as I mentioned in our Slack the other day. So Billy was kind of always one of my favorites. And plus he became so good with the media and dealing with the media that I give myself credit for that. Even though I definitely shouldn't.
Did you tell him that he needed to clap back at Twitter when people were like Billy Price missed a block and he would get on there and tell people to stay in their lane?
I would never tell anyone what to do. Let's be very clear.
Berm.
That group, yes, Chives.
Can I tell a quick story about Billy Price that I absolutely tell everybody I ever talked about Billy Price?
I mean, why can't you? This is a show where you can say whatever you want to say.
So I got free tickets to the Ohio State-Michigan State game, the rain game, the one that everyone wants to forget about. That's Ohio State fans.
2015, right?
Yeah, so I had free tickets to that game. So I went up the night before and went on High Street and woke up the next day at 3 a.m, went and got in line to get to game day because I'd never been. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was just excited to be there. So I'm standing there with my friend in line to get into game day. It's 6:30 in the morning. I was really tired. And I'm just talking about the team in general. And remember, Billy Price, that was not his banner season. He was probably one of the weaker links on that offensive line. And I was like, man, Billy Price, just that guy, he can't do anything on the offensive line. If they just had somebody to replace him, he would be great. And then some guy taps me on the shoulder. And I turn around, and he's wearing a Billy Price jersey. And I was like, can I help you? And he's like, hey, you might want to stop. And I was like, why? He's like, that's my roommate and my best friend. And he was freaking huge. This guy was massive. And he just stared at me. And I found a new place in line because I was afraid of that guy.
Good idea.
So I learned never to say anything bad about Billy Price in my life.
Who knows, Spencer? Maybe it was your prodding and poking that turned him into a Remington Award winner the next year.
I just always think that's hilarious because, like,
maybe it was you who did it.
It was not a good season for him, and then he ends up winning the Remington Trophy, and I'm like, man, he really progressed. But it makes me laugh every time I hear his name.
Like, who else were they going to put out there, for one? And for two, he didn't have a bad season. It's not like he was the reason that the offense was dysfunctional.
No, I was just a viewer of the game who was like, oh, man, like, you know.
Listen, you were an 18-year-old. You didn't know what you were talking about. Let's just move on.
I was 19.
I just had Billy Price.
In October of 2015?
No, it was November. That game was right before the Michigan game.
So November 2015, you were 19?
I had just November of 2015.
Oh, boy. Now we found our great lag in the show. Last week it's Berm's memory.
The point is, you're wrong. He did not have a bad year. He struggled very, very much in the beginning of 2014 as a redshirt freshman who just made the move over from the defensive line to the offensive line. I think Billy will acknowledge that he struggled that year. 2015 was a disaster for the Ohio State offense in so many ways, and none of them were because of the offensive line or the running back.
No, I don't. If I would look back on it and watch every game, I'd be like, man, why the hell did I say that about Billy Price?
Yes.
But for some reason, that day,
but at the time, you were a dumb 18 or 19-year-old who was prone to emotional outbursts and had spent the night before drinking on High Street. I get it.
Yeah.
How
did you acquire alcohol, Chives? You were under the drinking age.
I don't know, man. It's a wild ride.
Shenanigans.
Wow.
Point is, where were we? I'm talking about that class, the 2011 class. That was obviously in the middle of, not the Billy Price was in the 2011 class, but that's when I started talking to him. The 2011 class with Tyvis and Josh Perry and Pat Elfline, those guys were right at the beginning, really, of when Twitter started to take off. And so that group became very intrinsically involved with fans and media on Twitter and being involved in helping promote this synergy in the program when Jim Trussell was fired and there was all this confusion. So I always look back at that group as sort of very important in the big picture of Ohio State football, even if they weren't, even guys like Tyvis, who sure he was a multi-year starter and, you know, bounce around the NFL. But I think his place in the big picture of Ohio State football is different than people even think because of the value that guys like him and Pat Elfline and Josh Perry had when guys like Kyle Kalis were jumping ship and committing to Michigan instead of Ohio State. Now, does that mean that they're my favorite guys to interview? No, but they were all kind of up there because those relationships were formed pretty early. But there have been so many, and we talk about this so many times, but there's just the overall quality of the kids that are at Ohio State is so good right now that it's hard to pick one guy. I mean, I'm trying to kiss his butt since he was on Buckeye Q this week, but Sam Hubbard, I mean, again, just those kids in the 2014 class, Johnny Dixon, Terry McLaurin is one of my favorite people I've come across in this business. And Stephen Collier is one of my all-time favorites. And again, it doesn't matter to me if these kids made a big splash at Ohio State or if they didn't. Like, they're just great people and kids that were always open and honest and willing to talk. And, you know, I think it changed the entire culture at Ohio State for the better for us now in a way that we will never really truly appreciate.
Yeah, I think that's – I can't even really relate to a lot of the stories that people tell from before I got to this beat and, you know, some of the stuff that, you know, they dealt with. Certainly, I mean, Tim May's recollections are completely different and span all these eras, but even the immediate predecessors with covering the Tressel era and whatever happened in 11, that was right before I got here. Like, the first year I was covering Ohio State, you had – you know, Zach Bourne was a captain of that team, and John
Simon and those kids like that, like they're just great kids.
Well, I mean, John Simon never made things very easy for me personally. And there aren't a lot of people that are as prickly with the media still on this roster as the way John Simon was. And I've got some scars from that, but he was one of the most phenomenal players to cover on the field, which is the same is true for Braxton. Like you almost never see somebody with his physical ability combined with his sort of disdain for making public appearances and talking to the media. That was such a weird juxtaposition, is he could have really taken his fame to another level, I think, and he chose not to, which is his decision. And he's embraced social media now and all that, and good for him. But it just that connection never really panned out, at least for me personally. And that obviously doesn't matter to him. But if I'm making a list, that's why he would be on a different list as the best athletes I've covered, but not my favorite ones that have been at Ohio State, because he wouldn't sniff that at all. Chives, from your one season, who would you pick from last year?
I don't know. You guys helped me out a lot with that because you guys had a good relationship with him. But like, just after practice, talking to Chase, like knowing the persona around him and how great he truly is at what he does, and then just being able to have normal conversation with him, and just stand there, and then he's just like, he was just one of the guys, and like it's so cool to see his personality. And then you watch him on the field, and it's like completely different because he's a predator, crazy athlete, freak, get to the quarterback. And then you get him off the field, and he's just like, I'm just having a good time, And he's like such a relaxed guy. I don't know. He's just a lot of fun to cover.
I'm avoiding talking about current players, and I guess Chase is not a current player anymore. But, I mean, Jonathan Cooper is an absolute delight as a person. Great. And he has been since 2014 when I met him. I mean, he's just one of those kids that's never changed. And I think that, to me, the ultimate test of who someone is was when they get put on this stage, right, that these kids are on. And they get put on this pedestal by the whole world. And then they don't change. And they don't let it sour them. They don't let that attention frustrate them or make them a different, bitter person because they're no longer allowed to be a private person. And that, to me, that's Jonathan Cooper, Terry McLaurin. Those kids are like the exemplification of that because they're just exactly who they were. And to me, like, you see it. You guys don't see it. I see it when I'm in the recruiting process. You see kids all the time. When I say you, I mean the royal you, who are one way at the beginning of the process, and by the time they sign somewhere are completely different because they've let the attention and the fame and the notoriety take over who they were. And when you see kids that don't allow that, it makes such a huge difference to me in like the long-term, big picture scope of who they are, because ultimately football is an avenue and an outlet for these kids to get where they're going, but it doesn't need to change who you are as a real person. And so Cooper is the same way. If we're interviewing him publicly, if you're talking to him privately, if he's on the sideline, if he's on the, like, I just think that's so cool to see. So if we're talking, he'd be in that list for me for sure.
I think the other one that I really enjoyed talking to just through the season was Brandon Bowen. I don't know. He's always insightful when you talk to him, and then you get a couple questions away from the rest of the media, and he's just super nice and always willing to answer questions. And then we had him on Lettermen Live a few weeks ago, and he was just great. I really enjoyed my interactions with him. I'm really hoping he gets a chance in the NFL because I hate that he didn't get invited to the Combine.
Well, offensive linemen throughout my career, whether it's at Ohio State, when I covered Tennessee, even going back to starting at Wyoming, if you want information about football, offensive linemen are the smartest people on the team. They've got they generally have the most engaging personalities. If you want insight, that's where you go. And like I said, I talked to Billy Price yesterday for some Buckeye Qs that are coming out, and it's still like he is telling you things about the game that I could never hope to understand. That's why I've always sought them out. That started, Reed Fragel, Corey Lindsley, Taylor Decker. I've been fortunate to be around some guys who not only understand the game at a really high level, but also like to talk about it and explain it to people like me who don't, because I'll never, ever, ever be able to break down the X's and O's at even, higher than an amateur level, and not at the NFL level that these guys like Billy and Pat Elfline and, someday, Brandon Bowe and Jonah Jackson, Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis next year. Like, that's not – those guys all like to do it, and they're such engaging personalities. That's – if I ever gave one tip to somebody, like Spencer getting started here, you got to strike up a relationship and seek out those offensive linemen if you want to understand what's going on with a team and what's going on with a game, because they are the ones that are going to help you the most by far.
Well, like I talked to Gavin Cupp for 10 minutes after practice one day about nothing for any story. We've gotten to talk to Paris a lot. I'm excited to be able to cover Paris for the next few years because she's just a really nice kid to cover. And then you go into guys like Luke Whippler, like the guys that they're recruiting even now, like you keep talking about like the relationships you have with past players, but like the relationships that, we've already built a little bit, but we get to just talk to these guys for the next few years. It's going to be a lot of fun to cover these offensive linemen because they, like you said, they're just so smart.
They are. Berm, you're not drinking beer back there, huh?
No, I'm taking a week off of beer. And that is –
whole week with no beer?
Yeah, for a number of reasons. Number one, I haven't left the house in a week, and while we ran out. So I haven't made the run. But number two, I'm just trying to balance it out because the quarantine has turned into a bit of a rough patch. So this week, if I'm drinking, it's
over there. So
Maker's 46, my preferred bourbon of choice. But I'll get back on the beer wagon next week. I
know Chives ventured out last night and hit up our spot, Kinney Road Market. Chives, what'd you get?
I got the Mad Tree Soul Drifter. It's a strawberry blonde ale. It's not what I thought it was, but it's still pretty good. It's one of the hoppiest blonde ales I've had. So I think you would like it, Austin. And then I walked by this white and orange can, and I was like, well, that's interesting. It's from Winding Path Brewing Company. I had never heard of it. I stumped Austin because I think you've had, 4,000 beers, and you've never heard of it?
I had never even heard of the brewery, let alone the beer. Yeah, that's correct.
So it's from Pennsylvania. I asked the guy at Kinney Road Market. He said they're just now starting to get it, and I hope they get more because the Peaches and Cream IPA is fantastic. I think it's one that Austin's going to have to pick up. Berm, maybe we'll try and save you one.
It sounds good. That sounds like something right up my alley.
So, yeah, it's great. So those are my two beers of choice. And then I continue to mix in. I know it's not really a craft beer anymore, but if you've never had 21st Amendment Hell or High Watermelon, like as just a sipping beer, just to hang out, and it gets better in the summer, but like that is incredible. Like that is such a good beer. So those are my three beers I've been working on.
Well, we're going to need it to stop snowing in Ohio and Michigan to really get into something like that. A little fruity lager.
Yeah, I generally start the summer drinking with just a 12 Oberon with Bell's Oberon, which is one of my favorite, most consistent session beers in the summer. But I haven't bought the first case of Oberon yet because it's 30 degrees outside. And I refuse to do it until I know that winter's over.
Yeah, it's not the same to just have an Oberon in your house and then look out.
You got to have it out back, yeah.
It has to be on the patio.
Or the golf course, which I'm not allowed to go to.
Well, so what would happen for you? Because you are, for people that haven't picked up on this before, you're 1 mile over the border.
Mm-hmm.
So if you played golf in Toledo, because there are courses but would you be you have to? Isn't there some sort of
There are some places that are checking IDs, and if you have a Michigan ID, then they're not letting you play.
Okay, so you can't.
It's that bizarre.
All right,
that's how it always should be, right? If you want to golf here, you should live here.
You guys preach.
I'm hanging up.
All right. I'm going to do something really my wife has been on furlough. She's been a saint with my daughter all week. Our daughter, I guess I should say.
Yeah, it's hers too, right?
Yeah, it is hers too. With Liberty, and it's been hard. Obviously, I think she thought it would be more fun, but I've had to do a ton of work this week as we try to keep the coverage going at Lettermen Row. So we can't really go anywhere. There's breweries we can go pick up stuff. So we're just gonna get in the car and we're gonna drive to Yellow Springs Brewery, one of the best. It didn't make the top 4 list, but as Chives can attest, I know for sure that he can. One of the best in Ohio. It's going to be like an hour drive, and we'll place an order, do some carry out from Yellow Springs, and then hit that up for some home beers tonight.
Is that the one in Jackson?
No, it's in Yellow Springs.
Hey, Raspberry Springer, Austin.
Is that where they got the name?
Yeah. They really got creative with it.
Really ventured out.
Yeah. Dave Chappelle's favorite spot.
Yeah, that Raspberry Springer beer is fantastic. I will plug that any day of the week. So
all right, so I'll be
enjoy.
Pick a 6-pack of that up as we all try to survive here with little road beers and show road beers. What do you got, Berm?
Chavarino, did you start the MCU or not?
Oh yeah, got to get that update.
I have not because okay. So here's why. I'll tell you why.
God.
It's actually a good reason. So I want to watch them all with my girlfriend, and she is out of town all week babysitting her nephew while her sister is on Zoom calls for 9 hours a day because she has a job where she has to be on. She works with kids, so she has to be on a Zoom call with kids 9 hours a day. She can't watch her son while she does that because he usually goes to daycare. So Corey is babysitting every day this week for 9 hours a day. And so she is not in Columbus. She is back home with her family doing that. And I want to watch them with her. So I have waited, and I will start them next week once she gets back so we can watch them together.
You could have watched them all the first time by yourself and then been prepared for round 2 next week.
Right, because you're going to have to explain what's going on in a lot of cases. How can you do that if you've not? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right.
That feels like a good place to end it. We were going to do it. Now we had to end on a disappointing note that Chives just let you down, Barm.
Watch Ozark, Austin.
Okay, we got.
When you guys get back from Yellow Springs, watch the first couple episodes of Ozark. Dive into it. You'll like it. I'm not. Oh,
don't forget, if you've got names for Brim, send them in.
There's a good reason.
If you have methods of disposing of a body for Spencer, send those in as well.
Just cover me in sardine oil, Berm.
I have to go.
All right.
I have a very important interview today. Goodbye. 5
episodes of Road Beers down. We thank you for making it this far if you did. If not, we'll try and do better for you with episode 6 next week as we survive the quarantine and continue to provide some coverage.
Watch it or don't. We're here for us, not you.
We're going to do it anyway just to stay sane, but we hope that you found some enjoyment if you did make it to the end of episode 5. Thank you. I'm Austin Ward. Spencer Holbrook, Chives down there helping us out producing, and my buddy Jeremy Birmingham staying safe in his quarantine. We will see you next time at Lettermen Row. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye Q with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.